30-second warning for you guys. We'll be underway in just a minute, or 30 seconds rather. Okay, let's get it going. Welcome, everyone. I'm Brian Garvey from Massachusetts Peace Action. My pleasure to welcome you all for another webinar and what should be a very excellent one with some great speakers and organizers. And it's not just a webinar, this is an Actionar. You are going to be active members of this program tonight. And we're going to be asking you to help us really resist two of the greatest threats, perhaps the two greatest threats to humanity, those being nuclear weapons and the threat of climate catastrophe. So tonight's action R is Planet in Peril. And hopefully the actions that we take are going to make a difference in moving us away from the dangers of both nuclear weapons and climate change, which, as we all know, is caused by humans and our addiction to fossil fuels. We have a great program, but I want to bring to the screen my co-conspirator tonight, Timon Wallace from Nuclear Ban. Timon, say hi to the people.
Well, thank you. Thanks, Brian, and thanks everybody for joining us. We've got a great program for you tonight, and we'll get started very, very soon. I just want to welcome people on behalf of the Warheads to Windmills Coalition, which MAPA, Mass Peace Action, is a very important and welcome partner in, along with about 60 other organizations. Nationally, we have not just Massachusetts Peace Action, but a number of other statewide peace action branches and peace action nationally, as well as Veterans for Peace, who are a very important partner, especially in this particular weeks of action that we're going to be talking about tonight. But we have the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. We have Pax Christi nationally. We have World Beyond War and Code Pink and Roots Action and many other groups. I can't list all 60 of them now, but we're very happy to be working together on these issues. We've been working primarily for the last year or so on legislation in Congress together, and that's not getting very far, which is why we're now taking this moment to really focus on the companies, and you'll hear more about why we're doing that. But this is part of a global month really of action going on that we're trying to contribute to. Many of you know ICANN, the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons, has a week of action saying no to nuclear weapons. That's the first week of September 16th. And there was originally, we heard that there was a week on climate and militarism and peace taking place that second week alongside the New York Climate Week, which happens every year during that week of September. But there's now so many other events and weeks of action taking place during those 2 weeks that we're just part of a huge deluge of activity taking place. And as Brian said, we're counting on every single person in this Actionar to think of at least one thing that you can do during those 2 weeks or any time in September, really. So we're excited about this. We're going to have Dr. Ira Helfand speaking and Kathy Kelly, and then Anduin DeVos from our campaign is going to describe for you or go through what resources we have available on our website to share about these 2 weeks. And then Paul Shannon from Massachusetts Peace Action is going to get you all to do something before you turn off your computers. So that's what's going to happen tonight. And I know there are many, many other issues competing with us. I mean, things going on even tonight, as well as all through September. There's so many other things. People are very concerned about Gaza. They're very concerned about the election coming up, but also so many other issues that we all care about. So really what we're trying to do tonight is to not forget about these two, as Brian said, existential threats to all of us that are lurking in the background. And even as we are concerned about all these other things, we mustn't forget these big issues. So I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Ira Halfand. He doesn't need much introduction. I'm sure most of you know him and his work. He's a very important figure in the nuclear disarmament movement. He's probably one of the only people that can claim two Nobel Peace Prizes, one through his work with the International Physicians for the Prevention of Nuclear War, and the other through the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons, in which he's still on the International Steering Group for. So, Ira, please take it away.
Oh, thanks so much, Tim. And I want to thank everybody for coming to the webinar tonight. It's really exciting to see all of the actions that people are planning to do this month. And it's great that everyone can gather here tonight to talk about these plans and sort of further them. You know, as Tim has suggested, and Brian as well, we're dealing with two existential threats, and they're deeply closely related because in terms of the climate crisis, among all the horrible effects that it is going to cause, perhaps the greatest potential disaster for the human race resulting from the climate crisis is that this might well trigger a nuclear war. As conditions on the planet get more and more difficult for people, there's going to be a tremendous pressure towards conflict. And if nuclear weapons are still around, this may well be the way the climate crisis plays out for us. On the other hand, if there is a nuclear war, the primary way that it's going to affect the vast majority of victims across the world is by the abrupt climate disruption that it causes. So these two existential threats are deeply intertwined, and it's important that people involved in both of these issues understand the importance of addressing both of them. It's great that people will have the chance tonight to talk about the actions that they're going to be taking. And I think it's also terrific that we have a chance to talk about how we're going to use these actions to build a stronger movement. Because clearly that's the key. We need to have a much larger group of people taking action on these issues if we're going to bring about the fundamental change in policy that we need. And so, for example, if we're looking at the nuclear weapons producers, you know, is our strategy do we think we will eliminate the weapons primarily by putting pressure on the companies? Or do we think that we need to use these actions to further stigmatize these weapons, to educate people about the danger they pose, and to build a broader movement like the Back from the Brink campaign in the United States to bring about government-level change in policy? In either case, what's the message we want to bring people to get them to be more involved? You know, we're talking, for example, again, on the nuclear side, there's tremendous expenditure of money. I think it's about $90 billion is probably the best estimate that we have the US is spending every year. Is that our primary message? That there's this waste of $90 billion that could be used on other things? That's one possible message we could be putting forward. Do we want to focus on the lobbying aspect of this? To my mind, that's an even more compelling argument. The way that these very wealthy companies have totally corrupted the political process around the decision-making on nuclear policy. Our nuclear policy is not decided, you know, by rational people trying to figure out if we should have nuclear weapons or not. There's a tremendous weight on the scale placed by people who that's not their interest at all. Their interest is in securing contracts for their companies, regardless of what the impact is on the rest of the world. So is that a key focus of our message? And again, in either case, does either of these messages work with people who maybe have sort of a vague notion that they think nuclear weapons are bad, should be gotten rid of, but also maybe have an even stronger notion that somehow nuclear weapons protect us and make us safe, and they're not going to get used anyway, so we don't need to worry about them. Because I think that probably characterizes most people, at least in the United States. So what message do we need to bring to them to get them involved? And I would put in a plug at this point. I think it's terribly important that as we talk about the cost of the arms race, that we also talk about what's going to happen if these weapons are used and how likely it is that these weapons will be used if we don't get rid of them. Because unless people understand that, they're not going to pay much attention to us when we talk about the cost or even the lobbying effects. So we have a tremendous opportunity with all of us planning to take action together over this period of time in September to really reach out to a broad section of the population and to help them understand the urgency of addressing these two issues. And I think it's wonderful that so many people have stepped up and are planning to take action. And I hope that we'll have a very good conversation tonight about how best to do that and how best to take advantage of the actions that we do take, how to use them to really build a movement, both to stop the climate crisis and to eliminate nuclear weapons. Thank you.
Thank you, Ira. Always great to hear from Dr. Ira Helfand. Next up, we are going to be hearing from Kathy Kelly, who many of you may already know, but in case you don't, I will give a brief intro. Kathy Kelly is the board president of World Beyond War. She co-coordinates the Merchants of Death War Crimes Tribunal. Since the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan, she has coordinated an international network to assist young Afghans forced to flee their country. She made over 24 trips to Afghanistan from 2010 to 2019, living with young Afghan peace volunteers in a working class neighborhood in Kabul. Kathy has been an educator for most of her life, but she believes children of war and those who are victims of violence have been her most important teachers. A wise sentiment. And with that, I'll bring you up on the screen and hand the floor over to you, Kathy.
Well, thank you so much, Brian and Dr. Helfand. It's always wonderful to hear from you, although so sobering. And thank you also to Timon and to Paul and to Anduin. I'm very pleased to be with everyone tonight. I want to start by saying that when I was a young high school teacher, I taught in a private school that mostly catered to pretty wealthy families. And I would sort of lose some of the students that were nodding when I would ask this question: why ever in the world should people who already have so much be entitled to get more? And my friends, I think that that question is very relevant to what we're discussing tonight with regard to fossil fuel industries and the nuclear industry. And I want to say that right now, as we speak, people in Gaza are suffering an agony. And many people will say, well, but underneath Gaza, there are tunnels with weapons, and those are endangering people. But I would submit that the greatest, most dangerous tunnel in the region is actually in the Negev Desert, the Shimon Peres Nuclear Research Center, where the United States has actually helped Israel by protecting it to build at least 80 thermonuclear weapons. Why does the United States want to allow Israel to have that nuclear weapon bearing capacity? I believe it's because the United States wants a country in the region that can help the United States control the pricing and the flow of fossil fuels, because we in the United States have not been able to help ourselves overcome an addiction to fossil fuels and sadly to weapons and nuclear weapons. And so the coffers of the merchants of death get filled constantly from the hard-earned resources of people who, as Dr. Helfand has said, need these funds for many, many other things. But instead, we find that major investment companies are making money through their investments in nuclear weapons and fossil fuels. I could mention Vanguard, Capital Group, State Street, Fidelity. And then we find that there's now a new brand of intercontinental ballistic missiles being planned to be buried under the ground. It's called the Sentinel. Well, that Sentinel will guard the profits of Northrop Grumman. We find that the Trident submarine is going to retrofit new missiles on the Trident submarines, and Lockheed Martin will make an enormous profit. I would like to tell you that after I left that job teaching the wealthier youngsters, I found myself in a field outside of Kansas City, surrounded by a chain link fence, and underneath it was, in fact, an intercontinental ballistic missile. And I was part of a group who determined to plant corn on top of the intercontinental ballistic missiles. And that was a good idea, although now maybe I wouldn't plant corn, maybe something else. But I was about to be arrested. Soldiers came, and 3 of them took off in a vehicle. I don't know, maybe to check and see what does the manual say we're supposed to do next. So I'm by myself, and the soldiers got a rifle pointed at my head, and I'm handcuffed. And I might have lasted a minute in silence. And then I started telling him kind of a lot of what I've told you. And then I asked him, do you think the corn will grow? And he said, I don't know, ma'am, but I sure hope so. And then I asked him, would you like to say a prayer? Yes, ma'am. And I recited the St. Francis Peace Prayer. And he said, Amen. And then he asked me, ma'am, would you like a drink of water? And I said, oh, yes, please, ma'am. Please tip your head back. I can still feel that water dribbling down my chin. But what I want to capture tonight, my friends, is that young soldier's question. Would you like a drink of water? He cared more about man getting a drink of water than he cared about hanging on to his own weapon to protect the nuclear weapon. And I wish that we could say to the children who are dehydrated and thirsty and diseased, whether they're in Gaza or they're in Yemen or they're in the Sudan, would you like a drink of water? And we care more about you than about our weapons or our fossil fuels. I wish that we could say to Mother Earth, we care about planetary survival, and we no longer want to rob you of the liquids that you need. And so, my friends, listen to Earth. Abolish war. Abolish all nuclear weapons, all conventional weapons, and let us do the things that make for peace. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Kathy and Ira, both. That was a great introduction to why we wanted people to take action, and why these things are so important to us. And I'm going to now pass it on to Andwin, who's the campaign director of nuclearban.us, and is going to share with you the resources that we've put together as a coalition for these events coming up. And Andwin is the architect of all that, and will share what you can go to yourself. I'll put the link in the chat so you can all see for yourselves. It's easy to get to the website, but she'll walk you through it so you can see what's there. Andwin.
Lovely. Thank you so much for that introduction. Thank you, Ira and Kathy. That was a really important introduction. All right, so I'm going to take you right to the website. Let me make sure I have that page pulled up. There we go. Here we go. Okay, so everything I'm about to show you is on the Warheads to Windmills website. I think Tim is putting that in the chat right now. And there's a lot of information here. I'm going to walk through a bunch of different ways that people can get involved with these 2 weeks of action. All the different types of engagement and different angles and lenses to engage with this. Anything you can do is helpful, obviously, to take part in these weeks, but the more you can do, the more power and impact we will have, and the more we will be able to shape the story and the actual messaging, to Ira's point. Here, okay, so this is our campaign. We are combining 2 of the many weeks of action in September in a campaign to put pressure on the profiteers of nuclear weapons and fossil fuels. We really want them to feel shame. We don't want them to be able to continue operating business as normal with what they're doing. We're here to tell these climate and war criminals that we're not okay with the work they're doing, and we're going to take a stand in our communities, that we don't want any of our money, any of our business, any of our financing contributing to nuclear weapons or fossil fuels. So the overall messaging, in my opinion, to this, of course, there's, to Ira's point, there's a ton of different ways that we can engage with this, but the overall messaging in my eyes is to shame these corporations. These industries are dangerous, they're a waste of money. They are working towards the end of the planet when we desperately need to be working towards fixing these issues. So we need no more money for nuclear weapons and no more money for fossil fuels. There are many corporations that are profiteering that are putting profit ahead of people and planet for nuclear weapons and fossil fuels. For the purposes of our 2 weeks of action, we've narrowed it down to these 7 nuclear weapons companies and 7 fossil fuels companies. These are the companies, like I was saying, that lobby the government heavily to maintain our dependency on these industries. With these 7, we have 1 company per day of the week to really put concerted effort and pressure on reaching these companies, affecting their reputation, affecting their bottom line. So this is a real chance to have an impact here. So there are 3 different types of actions and angles that we can use during these weeks to put pressure on the profiteers and spread our message. 1, coordinated live actions at the corporate facilities, virtual actions that anyone can do anywhere to get in touch with these profiteers, and then actions at community institutions to talk about actually moving the money out of financing nuclear weapons and fossil fuels. So for these weeks, we put together a ton of different resources and options for all of these different types of actions. And I'm going to walk you through a bunch of different inspiration, ideas, resources for how to engage. So here for the Nuclear Weapons Week. Firstly, the first type of action we have actions at the company locations. There are many different ways that this can look like, from very civil to more disobedient. I'll walk you through some of those resources and ideas. First, with these types of actions, one of the most important things during these weeks is going to be getting attention on them. So contacting the media about them, raising community awareness. So to that effect, we have these media tools here, helpful toolkits, sample press releases about direct actions, tips on how to write letters to the editor. Really with this website, I'm just trying to make all of these actions and all of this campaigning as easy and as accessible as possible. So there's ways that everyone can engage with this. So there's some great workshops on here, some different samples that you can tailor to different kinds of actions that you're doing during those weeks. So that's just something to keep in mind with anything that you're trying to put together. Trying to get the media involved, local press, local letters to the editor is going to be a really important part of that. So just to walk you through some of the ideas and examples we have here. Like I said, you can do this as civil or as disobedient as you want to do. You can start off really respectable by trying to engage in conversations with the employees at these companies. For example, we have this flyer, it's downloadable at the bottom of the page as well, talking about economic conversion. If you want to work in a industry of death or when an industry of life really needs you, that could be a good way to try and start a conversation with these employees at these companies. So you can use that kind of resource we have up here if you choose to engage in that route. Of course, there's standouts, vigils, and demonstrations. This is a classic route to raise awareness in the community. It's very visual. Gather up as many people as you can with signs about how these companies' reckless profiteerings, and head out to your local offices. There's obviously, of course, more creative actions, and these might be more likely to get press attention. If you're trying to go that route, you can do die-ins, you can use crime scene tape, you can head out to these corporate offices, pretending to be an official UN enforcer for the nuclear ban treaty, informing them that their work is illegal, that kind of thing. So there's a ton of different ways you can engage with that. And then, of course, you can take it a step further if you want to risk arrest. That can be a very powerful way to get media attention. But of course, if you're going to do that, you really want to be prepared and know what you're getting into for that. So those are just some ideas for different actions you can do at company locations. The more creative people can get, the better. And if you want to plan an action, or if you want to see if there's one near you, we have this really useful map here, which you can zoom in on your area, see what of these companies have bases in your near you. You can sort them by the type of company. These are all the Raytheon plants. The starred location is the headquarters. Or you can sort by planned actions. All of our current actions planned are labeled with this little leaf tag, and you can sort by our planned actions. So you can see if there's one near you that you can join, or you can see if there's a gap that you need to fill by planning one yourself. Okay, so the next type of way you can get involved, it maybe if you can't get out to a company location, if there's not one near you, or if you don't have the resources to put together an action like that, there's all these ways that you can contact the companies to put the pressure on directly. And with the direct actions at the company locations, with this as well, there is different levels of engagement and involvement here. For each of these companies, we've collected the social media links, their phone numbers, their CEO emails, their US headquarter addresses, and there's a ton of different stuff and different action we can take with that information. The first level is a letter writing campaign. Using the tools below, we've made it incredibly easy to write to these CEOs. In fact, for each of these companies, if you click this button right here, it should open up this letter tailored to each company's work and the lobbying that they do. It should be primed, ready in your inbox. You just have to add your signature and click send, and it'll go right to the CEOs or their customer service email or whatever we were able to collect, or both, or all of the above. So that's a really simple tool. I really encourage anyone to do that, because we've made it pretty much as simple as possible. If the button doesn't work, you can also copy in this whole letter here, because it is right there. And yeah, so letter writing campaigns, obviously you can do this alone, and that's a great step to do if that's all you have time for. If you have more time in capacity, maybe you can put together with your group or with your friends a letter writing hour. And you can really hold an event and make it more of a concerted effort. If you do that, it might be more useful and more effective to target it towards a specific plant in your community. But you can click this button right here to download all of the tailored letters, and then you can just print them up, add your signatures in a group, and mail them out. So it's still pretty simple there. So that's letter writing, which is one really great way to get in touch with these companies. And then there's also stigmatizing on social media. Like I said, we collected all of their Facebooks, LinkedIn, Instagrams, whatever. All of these companies have social media pages where they publicly brag about the great work that they're doing. So that's a really great opportunity to turn that against them. You can do this very simply with those links. We've put together this really great shame toolkit. I'll show you a little bit of it. I'm very excited about it. Just got a lot of different samples, different inspirations for different kinds of the comments you can leave on their pages, really turning their work against them on both the nuclear weapons and the climate side. For example, targeting Raytheon's profits in the nuclear weapons industry at the cost of global security and the environment, questioning their practices, questioning their perpetuation of danger and destruction. If we really put in a concerted effort to fill up the comments of these profiteers, that's a very public way to bring shame to them. It's a public way. They can't ignore if we fill all of their comments, all of their inboxes, all of their notifications with this public shaming. That really would lower their reputation. So that's a great way to get involved there. And again, simple, you can do it from your home, or you can get together with a group of people and do it all together. Obviously, the more people doing it, the more likely it is to get noticed. I lost the scroll. Oh, there we go. Okay. And then the next step is phone banking. We've collected all these phone numbers for these companies. This might be a difficult one to get through to the big companies. If you can find local office numbers, that might be more effective. But even so, if you can get through their phone tree, this might be the most impactful way to reach these companies. If you can have a live conversation with these profiteers about the dangers of their work and how they could be putting their energy to better use, and how they're really putting everyone in danger and need to face the truth of what they're doing. And again, you can do that alone, or you can get together with a group of people, make a concerted effort to affect them in these virtual ways. And then lastly, we have writing into the newspaper. This again is a really effective way to not only get in touch with the companies themselves, because they'll see their name getting mentioned, but it's also a public way to bring shame to them. So they'll really care about that. If we're attacking them in the public eye, that image and that reputation is important to them. So again, here we have samples, and like I showed you in the media tools earlier, there's a lot of more resources there, but sample letters to the editor, op-eds, that kind of thing about their work. If you have a nuclear weapons or fossil fuel plant in your town, that's a good hook to get community engagement involved, and really get people thinking about the work that they're doing and what they're doing in your town. And like I've been saying, for all of these virtual actions, the more people we have doing this in a sustained manner, the more effect it will have, which is why we've launched up on the calendar, which I'll show you at the end. For each company, we have a virtual action hour. So we want as many people as possible during this hour. I think it's 3 p.m. for each company. If that time doesn't work for you, pick a different time and do whatever you can. But we want as many people as possible during that hour doing all of these virtual actions, bombarding their social media, calling into their offices, writing letters, sending the emails, just filling up their notifications. And it'll hit them from all angles and they won't be able to ignore it. And I'll show you how to access that at the end, like I said. Yeah, so these are the sample letters. We have this for all of the companies here. Again, if you click that button, you can send an email really easily. So I really encourage everyone to, if nothing else, send a couple emails, comment a couple things on their social medias. That's a really simple way to get involved. We also thought it would be helpful for each of these companies to collect what they actually do in the nuclear weapons industry, because that can be useful in your targeting if you want to tailor your social media comments to those kinds of things. So we have that here in the nuclear weapons work section. So that's useful information that we've collected here as well. Okay, and then the third type of action that people can take during these weeks is, instead of focusing on these nuclear weapons or fossil fuel companies themselves, is to focus on an organization or institution that you are connected to in your community and start conversations about divestment with them. More institutions than the everyday person probably realizes are involved in the nuclear weapons industry. In fact, I guarantee the majority of people's here banks are invested in the nuclear weapons industry. For each nuclear weapons company, we've actually listed their top investors, so you can see if you're financially involved. And we have a ton of resources, which I'll show you in a bit, about how to long-term campaign for divestment and have those conversations with your banks. But divestment is one of the most effective tools we have to put pressure on these actual companies. So during these weeks of action, we've laid out a couple very simple steps that anyone can really take, just breaking down divestment into easier terms. And you can do these during the weeks of action to put pressure on these companies as well. For example, handing in a letter to your institution, whether that be your bank, your colleges, they have endowments, your faith communities, they invest things, hospitals, local businesses, towns, they all have investments and do business, or not all of them, but a lot of them have, all of them have investments, not all of them do business, but a lot of them do business with these companies. So you can start the conversation by handing in a letter to these companies. You can set up a meeting with maybe your branch manager at your bank, talk about what their investment policies are, how you're worried about your involvement in these industries, that kind of thing. And perhaps if there is already an existing divestment campaign, or if you've already talked to them about divestment before, you might consider stepping up your divestment actions with a rally or a sit-in. And that would be a great photo op, any of these things, the meeting, handing a letter, having a rally or sit-in for divestment would be a great photo op. So take lots of pictures, same with all of the in-person actions. And if you get people together for a letter writing hour or anything like that, take lots of pictures, post them on social media, keep spreading the news about these weeks of action and the action you're taking against these companies. We really want to change the narrative. We don't want them to think it's okay to just keep doing what they're doing. So these are some simple steps for divestment, but of course we know that divestment can be a really long process. So we have here these guides for longer term divestment campaigning in all of these different spheres, guides on how to have conversations with all of these types of institutions about fossil fuel divestment and nuclear weapons divestment. These include things like scripts for phone calls, different types of letters, policy examples, pretty much everything you'd need to start a campaign going, have these conversations, and get divestment going. So there's a ton of information on this website. I hope you guys are all following along and picking up what interests you, but I'm not done. That was just the nuclear weapon side. So I'm gonna go back. First I'll show you, we have these resources here. Some of them are linked in the specific actions. There's more generic resources down here to help use during your actions. Whatever you can do, whatever's helpful. Click this button to take me back to the top. Just a quick navigation note, you can also click any of these links to navigate to a specific portion of the page so you don't scroll through. Okay, so that was the Nuclear Weapons Week and all of the ideas, inspiration, and resources on that side. We also have the Fossil Fuels Week, which is September 23rd to the 29th. And we have all the same resources. We have similar different ideas for actions at the companies. Obviously, you can still do standouts, vigils, and demonstrations, or civil disobedience, or that kind of thing. One of the more specific types of actions you can do for the Fossil Fuel Week would be leafleting at a gas station. This is a pretty clear one, especially because everyone has gas stations around them. These big 7 fossil fuel companies that we are targeting in this week, they all have a lot of gas station franchises, but there are better options. There are many locally owned independent gas stations. In my area, for example, Pride or Big Y Express, they're not getting their oil from big oil and they're not spending millions lobbying Congress. So that is a better option. If you want to take the route of targeting gas stations, you might want to do some local research to see what are better options that you can turn people to. But in a generic sense, we have this flyer which people can use if they want to take an action at a gas station, talking about why to avoid these brands, which brands to avoid, and how to find the better options. You can also try and have a conversation with the gas station owners, who are often just local business people. You can approach them about changing their affiliation, stopping getting oil from these big oil companies, that kind of thing. We also, sorry, I got lost. So there's a very clear link between, like Kathy was saying, obviously there's a very clear link between all of these companies that we're targeting in these weeks and their partnerships with Israel. Oil is a clear example. So we have, if you want to target gas stations and you want to connect with activists for Palestine, we have an optional back to this gas station flyer about big oil's connection to the conflict and genocide. So yeah, there's just a ton of resources here. We have our fossil fuel map here as well. This doesn't show all the gas station locations because that would be insane, but it shows refineries and terminals and that kinds of things. Again, you can see what actions we have planned for this week. And it's very interactable. You can find if anything's near you. I'll show you on the calendar this event later, but yeah, so we have the same kind of information and resources on how to contact the companies virtually, the same click to send an email kind of thing, and then the same ideas and resources for fossil fuel divestment. I do really encourage people, if you're going to be doing divestment actions, to try and combine the two, because it's largely the same financial institutions behind these things. These are the top ones right here. I think Kathy mentioned pretty much all of them. But yeah, so if you're going to try and have a conversation about divestment or about financial policies, it's a simple thing to combine. Yeah, so I think that covers, oh, here's some fun resources on this side as well, which you can use if you're having demonstrations, standouts. These are from Climate Finance Week, which is happening this same week. Yeah, so these are all of the actions, and I hope that gave people some inspiration. I hope something of interest stuck out to you. I hope there's something that you think you can do. Feel free to get in touch with me if you have any questions. I'll put my email in the chat for sure. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what you all come up with. But before I hand it over to Paul, let me show you our calendar so you can see what we already have going on in a little bit more detail. So as you can see here, we have the 2 weeks. We have the day assigned to each week. Let me switch it over to week view so you can see it. Here we go. So here is the fossil fuel week, September 16th to the 22nd. You can see up here we have the days. If you're putting together an action and it doesn't line up exactly with the calendar that we put together, don't worry about it. Overall, we're just trying to continuously put pressure on the companies, and that's the more important thing. Like I was talking about, we have our virtual action hours. So from 3 to 4 p.m. on Tuesday, September 17th, we're going to be doing a concerted effort for virtual action against L3 Harris. We have linked the shame toolkit, which I showed you already, their social medias, their phone numbers, their emails. It's all right here to make it really simple. So you can just add that to your calendar and have it right there ready to go with all the information that you'll need. And then some of our in-person actions, for example, we have an L3 Harris standout in Massachusetts and down in New Jersey, organized by New Jersey Peace Action. We're going to be doing some flyering, or not me personally, going to be doing some flyering against Raytheon and Dedham. There's a ton of different events put together around the US to really put pressure on these companies. This is the Fossil Fuel Week, No Money for Fossil Fuel Week, September 23rd to the 29th. Again, with these virtual action hours, boycotting Shell in Northampton, we have a climate militarism vigil in New Jersey. And you can see all of these actions as well down here in a list view with all of the details. So there's a ton going on that week, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what everyone else can put together and what we can add to this calendar. There's a ton of different angles to put pressure on these companies. So yeah, I think that's it for me. And I can hand it over to Paul to tell you how to add your events and get involved.
Okay. Wow, Andwin, thank you so much. That was quite a remarkable lesson in the corporate structures behind climate change and nuclear weapons. I think that's a 2-semester course at any good college. So don't lose that website. I, of course, remember absolutely everything you just said. But that doesn't matter that I can't, because with that website, Andwin, I can just go anytime I want to any piece of it, get the information I need for the particular way that I or my group is going to plug in to these 2 weeks of action. The Nuclear Weapons Week of Action, September 16th to the 22nd, and the Fossil Fuels Weeks of Action, September 23rd to the 29th. The purpose of this Actionar is to urge all of you in this wonderful audience we have tonight. Already we have 178 people out there. All of you have most likely organized some event or some campaign fairly recently. But this gives us a chance to do something all together in the hope that it will have a bigger impact on the public, awakening them to the unbelievable danger that nuclear war poses to us, what it would mean to us to have a nuclear war, something that remains a very real possibility, as unimaginable as it may seem to us, and to make people aware that this climate change, they may be seeing forest fires on TV, but climate change is coming after all of us. And so this gives us a chance to educate the public, and it gives us a chance to go after these companies, let them know people are watching them, that we do not like what they are doing. It gives us a chance to talk to their employees and to tell them, we know you have to feed your families, but is this the way that you want the talents that you have and the tremendous contribution that you can make to our country? Is this the way you want those talents used? So it gives us a chance to do a lot of things at the same time. And as I said, the main thing is that we do all these in the name of the Week of Action in the hope of having a broader impact. So what we're hoping is that each of you will consider, let me see if I can put the, it's not working
Don't
for
even
me.
worry about it.
Brian,
Don't
can you
even
put it
worry
in?
about it, Paul. I
Okay,
just put it in
Brian
there
is going to
for
put
you.
in the link to this sign-up form. And we're hoping everyone will strongly consider what you can do. Maybe you belong to a group. Maybe it's time for that group to do something together. Maybe you're doing something together all the time anyway. Let's just transfer it into this Week of Action. Andwin mentioned actions at company locations. On that map you saw, you can find out where these companies are located. Just look up the company, it'll give you the exact local address. It's amazing. You can go to those companies, but remember, as Andwin said, that these companies, the stock of these companies is controlled by financial institutions, and they depend on loans and underwriting by commercial banks. And so if you don't have a company that produces nuclear weapons near you, then you can go to one of these financial institutions and say, you must use the stock that you control. You control Raytheon. You control Shell Oil. Okay? You have power. It is time for you to step up and use the stock in these companies that you control and introduce at stockholders' meetings a resolution to end your company's the bank that you own, to end their participation in the production of nuclear weapons, to end their participation in worsening the fuel crisis. So direct actions of all kinds. Colleges, some of these companies own engineering departments at these colleges. At UMass Amherst, Raytheon is connected to their engineering department. The same at many, many other big universities. Go after those universities, tell them to cut their connections to that particular company. You can cause a lot of controversy that way. So those are outright actions. Then the other idea is that at the same time doing the action, or if you can't do an action, instead, get in touch with the CEOs of these companies. Send them, get into their Facebook accounts. Send them emails. Make copies of the letters that are on the website that you just saw. Go out to a public place. Ask people to come over and sign the letter. Collect letters at a particular time. Maybe at the same time that people are doing an action at that particular company. You decide. You decide what you can do, what you have the resources to do, but please do something. And finally, the divestment and boycott. We've seen in the Gaza movement how powerful this notion of divestment can be. It's a lot of work, but it's work that can begin, and it gives us a way of raising the issue of nuclear weapons and climate change at our local towns, at our colleges, at our churches, synagogues, whatever, to ask them to consider divesting from fossil fuels and nuclear weapons. So those are the three big ideas that I see in the presentation. Please, we're urging each of you, each in your own way, to get to that link that is somewhere in the chat. And Brian is going to keep putting it in now over and over. And we're going to actually give you just a few minutes now to look at that, to open up that link, right, Brian? To open it up and see what parts of that information you feel comfortable filling in. If all you can do is fill in your contact information and say, I have an idea that I'd like to go to BlackRock and tell them to stop, to do something with the billions of dollars they own in these weapons companies, not that they own, but that they control, then put that in. We just want to pick up from you what ideas you have. And the main thing is that your willingness to participate in one or both of these weeks in any way you can, whether through direct actions, through the letter writing, through the social media stuff, through the divestment idea. You've seen all these millions of ideas. You can go back to that website, because I know Timon put it in the website, in the chat, and I know he's going to put it in again, so you can go to that website anytime you want and grab not all the information, but just the stuff that will work in the action that you are planning. So we're actually going to take 2 minutes. Hope you'll hang on there, open the link that Brian is putting in there to the sign-up sheet, and start to fill in whatever information you can. Hit the send button at the end, and we will get that information, and we'll start to compile this information and get back to you. And if you have any particular questions, Andwin is waiting and ready to answer any kind of question you might possibly have, and she has put her email address in the chat as well. So let's just take a minute and let everyone open that link and fill in whatever you can.
Paul, thank you for that rousing call to action. The link is right there for you to click, and I'll also send it out in follow-up email and ask you to spread it around to all your friends who might be interested in organizing an event as well. Now, it's going to ask you for a time and a place, and you need to put that down. If you don't have one in mind yet, if you're still in the idea stage, then just pick your ideal time. Pick your ideal place. We can always go in and help you change it later. There's even an option that says, my idea is in the idea stage and I need some help. If you select that, we'll be contacting you. We will be helping you. Maybe it's not your 50th time organizing event. Maybe it's your first. And I think that's one of the most important things that we can do here is by organizing events on these big issues, we show people that it's possible to get involved, to act on these existential threats. And that can inspire others to do the same, right? We're trying to build a movement, as Ira was saying, strengthen the movement. And by your example, just doing a small thing, you never know what you can inspire. So I do encourage you all to just take a couple of minutes, fill out as much information as you can, and we will get in touch with you. We can plug you into like-minded people who are interested in attending your event. And hey, you'll get your event on Anduin and Timon's beautiful website. And really, I mean, they wouldn't say this, but I'll say it. They've done so much work and given us so many resources that we really don't have excuses not to take action. So just take a couple of minutes, share with us your ideas, because there's a ton of resources that we have that have been given to us by Anduin and Timon, and we really ought to make use of them.
That's right. And I want to welcome everyone from the War Industry Resistors Network. I know there's a lot of you out there who have been watching those webinars, and this is a great chance for the War Industry Resistors Network groups who already are focused on particular war companies to organize an action around that company that you've already been focusing on and to plug it into this week of action. Maybe another 30 seconds, Brian, will give them, and then I think people may have, do we have time for a few questions, maybe?
Maybe
I'm gonna bring Tim in up. Yeah.
Maybe
ahead.
we can encourage people who are filling out the form to let other people know in the chat that you've done that. I don't know if we know otherwise how many of the 158 people that are still on this call are doing their bit to add something that they can do. I mean, even if it's just to write a letter or send an email, please use that form and let us know. That'd be great. And if we do go to questions, I hope we can just keep it focused on, how to use the website that Edwin showed you, how to get involved if you're isolated where you are, or how else to contribute to these 2 weeks. We're not going to open it up for big long conversations about the issues at this point, I think. But if you have questions for Ira or Kathy Kelly, also that's an option. Thanks.
So Brian, what do you think? Should we open it up to 1 or 2 questions here?
Sure, that's fine by me. If you can talk about the action that you're planning, that's even that's the best thing.
Yep.
Let's go to Jeffrey. Let's add you onto the screen. You can unmute yourself and ask your question. I think we may have lost our illustrious speakers, so you're just stuck here with us organizers. I hope you don't
No,
mind that,
Ira's
Jeffrey.
still here. I'm pretty sure. I think Kathy is still out there somewhere in the ether.
Oh, Ira is still here. That's
Yeah.
right. I think we did lose Kathy, but
I put a majority of my questions in for Tim and Wallace, but I'll mention one idea I got.
right.
We should do an event that saying to convince the corporations that are profiteering off nuclear weapons or putting profit ahead of people and planet for nuclear weapons, that all their money would be rendered useless if a global nuclear war happens. This is no joke. I even asked an AI and it confirmed it. And it confirmed it. And then I would help more, but I really need an attorney because my organizations, more typically the International Radiation Awareness Day that I'm trying to promote for the to get to the UN observance. For YouTube, they just removed the channel literally, and for Facebook, I'm literally stuck at a checkpoint.
Thanks, Jeffrey. Let's keep going because we've only got a few more minutes to get some other questions in there. Thanks.
Does anybody got an attorney?
Good luck with your project, Jeffrey.
Look into the
anybody have an
National
attorney I can
Lawyers
borrow?
Guild. The National Lawyers Guild is good for that. I am going to, let's see. Clarette, you're up next, but I don't see you. So I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself. And if you're there, go ahead and ask your question.
Yes, I commend you. I know Paul very well. We've encountered each other in the streets. But I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but I do have to bring to your attention that I think that our actions, and laudable as extensive as I've heard tonight, I think they're falling below the level of events, because the nuclear doctrine for our country, as well as for the Russians now, has changed. And everyone is considering fighting to the death and or what they call a win, which we know there's no win.
Have you got a question you want to put to Ira?
How are we going to respond to that change? How are we going to reach people who don't want to hear what we have to say because they need to weigh in on what their country's doing to bring about, Armageddon. We need to really, talk to those folk who don't like to come on platforms like this. And I would elicit your help this Friday to join me with Ted Postal and Ambassador Matlock and others who are mobilizing for several out in the street events, but also educationals about the solution. So Paul knows how to reach me, and I'll leave it there.
Okay, thanks, Clarette. Ira, do you have any comments on this problem that you've been spending so many years dealing with, of how to make people concerned about this?
I think Clarette has hit the problem just exactly right. We need to figure out ways to reach people who don't come to webinars like this. And we need to figure out how to reach out beyond the traditional peace community, going out to organizations, in particular communities that already exist, but which don't have this on their agenda. And that's what Back from the Brink has done. We've just been going out to, say, church groups, at churches that had not been previously active, and trying to make a presentation to them about why they need to be worried about this, that nuclear war really can happen, and that, as several people have pointed out, if it does happen, it's going to be the end of everything we care about. And it's a message that's hard for people to hear because it's a very sad and scary message, but it's a message that people need to hear. And I think what we find is that when we're able to get before people, we're able to explain to them what's going to happen if there's a nuclear war, and that there is something they can do about it, we get a good, favorable response. And this movement, as you can see, with all the enthusiasm seen here tonight, this movement is growing in our country. Whether it's growing fast enough is, I think, a real question.
Okay, thank you, Ira.
See, Neil, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself. I'll bring you up. Go ahead with your question.
I have been involved with many grassroots organizations over the last 4 decades. I think this is an incredibly well-organized campaign, and I'm making a commitment that I'm going to bring it to the attention of the leadership of my local Third Act group in Eugene, with the intention of getting momentum from them so that we could bring it to the attention of Third Act in Oregon. I think this is an excellent set of campaigns and long-term strategies to both educate public, shame the companies, and put pressure on them. To use a very old expression, you use the tools of the plantation to dismantle the plantation.
Great. Sounds great, Neil. We'll be looking forward to hearing from just what you're going to get planned out there.
Thanks, Neil. Next up is Louise Coleman. You can unmute yourself and I'll bring you up on the screen.
Great. Okay. I don't know why, but I couldn't see a link to fill out the form. Am I the only person who didn't see it?
Well, I put it in there quite a few times, but other people might be having that same problem. So don't worry, you'll get a follow-up email
Okay,
that has
good.
the link
Okay.
right in there.
And I can do it that way. Okay, that's cool.
Spread it around too.
But I also just wanted to mention, when we were talking about using the press and trying to get more attention during all of these actions, I was just going to suggest 2 things. One is to, if you email a press release, it's always a good idea to follow it up with a phone call, because the press people get so many emails that lots of times they just don't get to who you want them to go to. And it's also good just to connect with the assignment editors at newspapers and TV stations and make sure they understand what you're talking about. And lots of times they're interested. So it's always a good thing just to make contact, the phone call. Last thing is just that one of the things I think that I'm going to try to do, and I'll fill out the form, is to try to point out to people that it's not just the people who would all die in a nuclear war, but the animals will all die. And they certainly don't deserve that. So I'm sort of starting a campaign and using my my hound dog, Jack Frost, as the star. And he is very affable. when we walk down the street, he thinks everybody's there to say hi to him. So he'll be a good representative.
A good ambassador, good.
Very good.
Thanks, Louise.
You're welcome.
Next, I see Gus Steves, and let me know if you're pressed for time, illustrious speakers. But Gus,
Thank
you're
you
up
very much.
next.
I just have a quick comment. A couple of days ago, I was trying to organize one of our speaker event regarding nuclear weapons, and I was rejected by the organization that I belonged to on the grounds that it was not appropriate or it would spark a left-wing reaction. How do you get people who don't even want to recognize how dangerous this is to recognize how dangerous this is so they can get in the door? I did find another place to host it, but
Great.
Yeah, that would make sense. Change doors.
which didn't make any sense. So, I mean, the argument didn't make any sense to me, but of course I'm here and they're not.
Yeah.
So,
Well, Ira has an answer for you for that.
Yeah, I mean, there are some doors that you just can't open. There are some people who are not going to entertain a conversation about this, which is bizarre and regrettable, but it is the way it is. I think you did just the right thing. If you reach that kind of an impasse, you look for a different way forward and try to find somebody else to host the event. There are people who, for example, will argue this is a political question. We don't do politics in our organization. And I think you just have to explain to them that this isn't political. This should be nonpartisan. We're talking about the survival of the human race, and that's not really a political issue. Some people, just they don't want to deal with controversy, and that's going to be an issue we're going to have to deal with. And I think you did it just the right way.
Thanks, Ira. That's a good approach. Just go on to the next door. Next up is Stephanie Hiller. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself, and you can go ahead with your question.
I'm just wondering about, I would love to bring this to high school students. But unfortunately, I don't know anyone at the high school, that my kids are gone from high school. I don't know the teachers, and I don't know what would be a good way in to talk to them about that. But there have been a couple of protests organized by kids. So it's not completely alien, to them. They haven't been, I don't think they've been about the bomb itself, but climate change was one, and one was school shootings and asking for safety in the schools. So any suggestions I would appreciate for how to penetrate the labyrinth of the high school.
Well, there is a students organization now, Students for Nuclear Disarmament, which is led by high school students and now some college students, because some of the high school students have graduated. But you need to get in the door at the school to be able to present this. So I think you need to look in your community and see who who does have kids in the high school who might be an ally in this, or who who's a teacher at the school, and try to get them involved. And a good way to introduce them is to refer them to the group Students for Nuclear Disarmament. They have a website, and I'll put my email in the chat as well. You can reach them through me also.
And just to add it on the fossil fuel side, one of the many events that's happening during these 2 weeks that I mentioned, one of them is a global climate strike of high school students, called for the 20th of September. That's organized by Fridays for the Future. There's groups of high school students all around the country. I don't know about in your particular area, but I mean, you could try to get in touch with them, and they would certainly help you reach out to high school students about that event.
Well, thank you very much, Tim and Ira, for that.
And I think we're starting to wrap up, right, Brian?
We are indeed. Do you have time for one more? Or I know we told Ira we'd be off by 9:15, but that should give us time for one more. Let's see. Joanne, I can see you, so I'm going to go to you. You just need to unmute yourself.
I just
There
wanted
you
to
go.
respond to Stephanie. I'm a former social studies teacher. Please contact the social studies department in your schools. I hope they're the ones that are behind all the demonstrations that are going on. They should be, but that doesn't always work. But at least start there. There are social studies organizations. It's possible to put on workshops in social studies organizations, but you need usually a teacher to be able to do that. They have to be a member of the organization to do that. But we have speakers out here that are perfectly able to do that. So it's possible to arrange that kind of outreach.
Thank you. That's good practical advice. Timon, do we want to call that the last question? That's a good one to end on, kind of.
Well, there are 3 more people with hands up. Maybe they could put their questions in the chat and we can try to follow up afterwards.
Okay. Yep, that's a good idea. So please, Cheryl Quanta, sorry we didn't have time. We did promise we'd get off by 9:15, and that's rapidly approaching. So please put your question in the chat for us. And final words, Paul, Timon, Ira, and Anduin. Final words to the audience.
I just want to give a shout out to Anduin for that superb website. And it's just a wonderful, wonderful resource, and I'm so grateful to her for putting it together.
Thank you. That was the goal. I just hope it's a good resource for everyone to help put something together.
And I hope you'll all go and use it. Please go to that website and sign up with the form that Brian gave you for events. We want to fill up that calendar, even if it's with, I'm going to send a letter to the CEO of Shell on Monday, the September 23rd, whatever, anything. You can do it. We can fill that up, and we can inspire others to do more. So please go ahead.
Thanks to everyone for getting on. We've still got over 100 people. It's amazing that people have held on there. I think we all know that this is something we have to deal with, and let's see what we can get done.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night, everybody. Thanks, Brian.